Hi, this is Dr. Ogren, and now I'm going to talk about internal organization and what that idea of how we consider what's happening inside the walls of the organization and how important that is. So, firms achieve strategic competitiveness and earn above average returns when their core competencies are really effectively acquired, they're bundled, they're leveraged so that we take what we're good at, we recognize the value in it, and we apply it into the marketplace as effectively as we can. Over time, the benefits of any value creating strategy can be duplicated by competitors, but um, but we need to consider all of the traditional factors like labor and access to finances and raw materials that are protected and regulated in markets continue to be sources of this competitive advantage. But really what we're talking about is recognizing how to overcome our competitors by the things that we're really good at, if we just say it in plain spoken terms. Increasingly, those analyzing their firm's internal environment have to have a global mindset. Sometimes we're too much in the bubble of our own folks that tell us what we want to hear, or we're like-minded, and we need to get out of that in order to look at the industry and even the global impact of what's happening in the world. Analysis of the firm's internal environment requires that we examine our portfolio of resources and kind of bundle those resources that are similar and recognize the capabilities that our leaders and managers have created. Understanding how to leverage those really allow us to be transparent, now be authentic as we look and review our internal environment. By using or exploiting our core competencies, firms are in a position to develop and perform value-creating strategies better than our competitors, or to create and perform value-creating strategies that our competitors are maybe unwilling or unable to imitate. And that's where we get real competitive advantage and recognize our core competencies. So, it's important to also recognize the sustainability of our core competencies, because if we don't recognize what they are, then we can't protect them and save them. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about core competencies and how we know what those are in a minute. These are questions that are great when you're evaluating a firm's internal situation. How is our strategy working? Oftentimes, I'm not going to read all these questions, you can read those, but I will say that oftentimes organizational leaders let their ego get in the way. They are more focused on their personal performance or their team, departments, etc. And we don't always find that we can be really transparent and honest about what we're good at and what we're not good at. So it's really important to take advantage of what we're good at, recognize it, and recognize how it brings value towards our strategic plan. Indicators of how well a company's strategy is performing is really important. The idea of value is really important as we talk about core competencies. So value is measured by a product's performance characteristics and by its attributes for which customers are willing to pay. Firms create value by innovatively building and leveraging their resources to form capabilities and core competencies. Ultimately, creating value for customers is what our goal is, and it's the source of getting above average returns for a firm. So it's important to recognize what value people are paying us for. There's challenges when we look at the internal organization and we try to really analyze it well. For example, knowing when a capability is not a competence. We can be capable of something, but it can be not a core competence. We can learn quickly. We should be able to fail fast, learn quickly from our mistakes, and move forward. This is a great figure that demonstrates the conditions affecting the decisions that we make. Uncertainty, complexity, and intra-organizational conflicts are really aspects of our analysis internally that can create conflict, angst. So uncertainty is about what sometimes we're in uncertain times, and what is the market doing? What's the industry's future look like? So really having a clear and real viewpoint of what's happening in the market is important. As well, complexity. We have so much complexity in our world that not getting bogged down into the minutia, but remembering what those big rocks are that help us move forward and really move the needle. That's what we should really be focused on more than those daily fires and inertia that we often find consume our time. And then intra-organizational conflicts is really the idea that we have competing goals within an organization. Sometimes we set up departments in order to compete without realizing it. If sales goals are defined one way, but as an example, marketing is defined by budget and return on investment, maybe they're not supporting each other. Maybe if they're only measured within the structure of that department, let's say marketing is measured by how many leads they bring in, they may not be the most qualified leads. If I'm only measured on volume, then that may not be what sales need to support a sales function. So that's just one example of how we can have intra-organizational conflicts, not really between people. It can be between people, but also about the decisions we make within the organization. So resources, this is a great chart that demonstrates the idea of resources. Those are the tangible and intangible things we need within an organization to get the work done. Some of those filter up into capabilities. That means we are able to do them internally. Some we need to do externally. And then some of those capabilities are really our core competencies, meaning we are better at those than other people, and we can do this work better than other people. And we need to recognize that so we can save and protect those core competencies. Those are the elements that bring us competitive advantage. So it's a really important element. So resources, let's talk about what those are. Resources are our assets, the things that we have that help us create the work that we do. So I think of them as inputs and things that transform those inputs. So it's raw materials, it's the financial resources, it's the things that we need. This is an example that if you've been in production operations, you've seen the same example. Our inputs are those raw materials that we need to create the thing that we're selling or the service that we're selling. And resources are really those ideas of transforming that. So in this case, the grill is a resource that's a tool, but the act of transforming that takes all of those resources and creates an output. Just another way to think about it. The tangible resources are assets that can be observed and quantified. I can count them. Examples of tangible resources are financial, organizational resources, physical resources, and technology. This is a chart, table 3.1 in your book, demonstrates tangible resources and what they are. And intangible resources are different. We can't count them. Think of these, I can't inventory them, I can't see them and hold them in my hand. Think of them as knowledge, managerial capabilities, organizational culture, the routines, the processes we go through, and our brand name are all examples of intangible resources. They bring value, but they can be overlooked because they're not tangible. So table 3.2 in your book gives good examples of that. So tangible and intangible resources are important for you to recognize that they're different. I'm going to pause there and come back to capabilities and core competencies in a minute. Thank you. So in part 2 of this video, I'm going to talk about capabilities and core competencies. So we already talked about resources. So how are they different than capabilities? Capabilities are created by combining those intangible and tangible resources in order to bring value to them. So think about organizational tasks that are required to produce or distribute service and goods that we provide to our customers. The process that we go through to change those tangible and intangible resources into capabilities are what we're talking about here. So they're the organizational tasks. And the foundation for building our core competencies and competitive advantage are really based on this idea of developing and exchanging information and knowledge through our people to create processes, products, and services. So it's really important to remember that strategic human capital allows a firm to develop capabilities through matching our knowledge, our skills, our abilities of their employees to the strategic objectives, and really thinking of our employees and their knowledge as capabilities. It's an important part of internal analysis. So this example of how different organizations and firms use their capabilities in different functional areas, and how we represent the capacity of those resources in order to create value in different types of organizations and types of functional areas in an organization. And that table continues on. So when we talk about then the idea of core competencies, we are really talking about what are the things that create value for our organization. What are the things that create value in a way that others cannot imitate them or substitute for them? So we're looking for what sets us apart and are different than our competitors are, and the activities that we perform better than other people, if you think of it that way. Two tools that help identify core competencies are the 4 criteria of sustainable competitive advantage and the value chain analysis, which we'll talk about next. So the 4 criteria of sustainable competitive advantage are, think of it as the idea that our capabilities that are the most valuable to us should be valuable, they should be rare, they should be costly to imitate, and hard to substitute. And when our capabilities fail to satisfy any of one of those competencies, then maybe it's not a core competency. Not every capability that we have is a core competency. So for a capability to be a core competency, it must be valuable and unique from the customer's point of view. We create something that other people can't because of blank. For a core competency to be a potential source of competitive advantage, it must be hard to imitate and hard to substitute. Valuable capabilities allow the firm to exploit opportunities or neutralize threats, and rare capabilities are those that are very few, that are hard to be possessed by other people. Costly to imitate capabilities are those that others would find it too much, there's too much time or too much money or too many resources needed in order to repeat that capability. So they'll go do something different instead. The value chain is really an important part of internal analysis, because what we're talking about is where in our processes and where in our organizational structure do we provide value that is actually recognized by our customers. It explains how firms analyze value chains to determine where they're able to create more value in all those internal resources. Today's competitive landscape demands that firms examine their value chains in a global rather than a domestic only context, because we live in a global community. So as depicted in this model, a firm's value chain is segmented into value chain activities and support functions. So value chains are segmented into value chain activities. So the bottom row shows activities where the firm has to complete these activities in order to produce and then sell, distribute, and service those products or services in ways that create value for customers, right? That's core. So those are core value chain activities. I have to have raw goods. I have to understand my processes to create it. I have to distribute to people, market it, and sell it, and provide good customer service. But in addition to that, we have support functions in an organization. And some of you will go on to work in those value chain activities, but some of you will move on also to work in those support functions. And those are really important as well, because we can't sustain as an organization without those support functions. And those activities are tasks that have to be completed in order to support the work being done to get the products or service sold, created, sold, distributed, and serviced. So a firm can develop a capability and or a core competence in any of these 9 areas, support or value chain activities. We could be excellent at finance, or we could be excellent at how we lead people and look at our employees as core to the organization. So we can look at any of these organizational functions as part of the value chain that sets us apart. This figure represents activities associated with each of those value chains. It's really gets into the details of what each of those value chain activities and then support function activities do. All items in both of these figures should be evaluated relative to our competitors and compared to them to identify if we have core competencies. To become a core competency and a source of competitive advantage, a capability must allow the firm to either perform an activity in a manner that provides value superior to our competitors, or that competitors can't perform. And that's the idea around value chain activities. And I'm going to stop here and move on to part 3, where we'll talk about reasons for outsourcing.